Pay close attention to the pair crossing this parking lot. The woman in the light jacket is Leah Jensen, 22. The man beside her is Ethan Cole, 35. He contacted her about a short-term apartment, utilities included, easy approval. At 2:18 p.m., they walk into the motel lobby to go over paperwork. No one here knows it yet, but this 30 seconds of footage will become the center of an investigation that won't let the city sleep.
Leah Jensen's plan was simple: work 2 jobs through spring, move closer to the design school she'd been accepted to for fall, and cut her commute to something human. Rent, not romance, was the reason she answered the listing. The post felt designed for someone exactly like her: quiet studio, month to month, utilities included, pet-friendly, near bus line. The contact used a professional tone, called himself E. Cole, and replied within an hour asking for a short phone screen. He asked about employment, references, move-in date. He never asked anything that felt out of place. Leah hung up relieved, not suspicious. Someone finally sounded helpful. Her roommate Mia, a nursing student working nights, noticed the calendar block Leah penciled on the fridge: 2 o'clock, paperwork, keys? Leah laughed when Mia teased her about writing keys with a question mark. Manifesting, she said, tapping the word with the marker. If I sign today, I can move by the 1st and cut the bus ride in half. She texted her dad a photo of the note and the address for the cafe inside the Lone Star and off Route 183, where E. Cole said they'd meet because the building manager wasn't on site yet. The morning of March 11th felt like any other Austin Friday: sky a flat sheet of light, air cool enough for a jacket. Leah clocked out from her opening shift at the bakery at 11:48 a.m., grabbed a coffee to go for the bus ride, and texted Mia a selfie: "Wish me luck. If this works, I'm buying a real couch." At 12:36 p.m., a confirmation email pinged her phone: "Great speaking earlier, Leah. I'll be in a black hoodie, blue jeans. If lobby is busy, we'll walk next door to the conference room. Ethan." It was the first time he used his full name. Leah arrived early and sat in the motel cafe where the menu board still listed prices from another decade. She opened the rental packet she'd printed at the library: pay stubs, a photocopy of her ID, a letter from her bakery manager confirming hours. At 14:12, a man matching the email walked past the front windows, then looped to the parking lot as if double-checking something. The cafe camera caught him glance through the glass, 1 second of eye contact with Leah, before he looked away and texted, "I'm out front by the pole." Leah slipped the packet into a folder, tossed her cup, and stepped into the wind. The motel's exterior camera captured what you've already seen: Leah and Ethan crossing the lot. They looked like any pair of renters and agents walking to see a unit: no raised voices, no hesitation. He speaks, she nods. When they reach the lobby, he holds the door. The clip ends there. That would be the last moving picture of Leah the public would see for weeks. At 6:05 p.m., Mia noticed Leah hadn't sent the got keys selfie she'd promised. She texted, "You signing?" The message showed delivered, then sat unanswered. By 7:41, her follow-up, "Home soon," flipped to not delivered. Phones die, people forget. Mia tried to believe those were the reasons as midnight approached, but the fear that had been nibbling at the edges became something with teeth. She called Leah's dad, then the non-emergency line, then the non-emergency line again when the first operator told her to give it until morning. By 12:38 a.m., a patrol officer stood in their living room, filling out a missing person worksheet that asked too many questions that didn't feel relevant to Mia. Any history of leaving home? Any recent arguments? Mental health diagnoses? The officer was kind, but the policy was the policy. Leah was an adult. Maybe she needed space. Mia didn't sleep. She opened Leah's laptop and typed Ethan Cole Austin Rental into the search bar. The results were sterile: LinkedIn profiles that were not him, an old Yelp review for a different Ethan at a car wash, and a dozen rental scams warning never meet off-site. She checked Leah's email with her blessing. Leah had written the password on a sticky note under a ceramic mug labeled pins. The inbox showed the chain: initial reply from E.Cole Rentals at a privacy masked address, the phone screen confirmation, the 12:36 message with his full name and clothing description. Mia clicked the envelope icon, show original. She didn't know what most of the headers meant, only that strings of numbers and letters named servers and routes. She took screenshots of everything. At 8:07 a.m. the next morning, Mia met a detective at the Lone Star Inn. The manager, a tired man in a golf shirt, looked alarmed when he learned why they were there. He led them to an office with 4 monitors tiled into grids, each square stamped with a timestamp. "We only keep 30 days, he said, punching dates into a keyboard. The monitor flickered to March 11th. They watched Leah walk in at 13:58, sit, then leave at 14:18. They watched Ethan circle outside, then reappear in the parking lot camera where the two of them crossed together toward the lobby. There was no angle that showed them turn right to the conference room, but a hallway camera recorded them exiting the lobby 9 minutes later and heading toward room 217, a rentable meeting space marked by a brass plaque. The feed showed them disappear inside at 14 hours 28 minutes and 41 seconds. The camera on that hallway never recorded Leah coming back out. It did, however, record Ethan returning alone at 19 hours 3 minutes and 12 seconds, his hoodie darker now from the damp, a gym bag over his shoulder. He walked past the front desk without looking up, pushed through a service door, and vanished toward the back lot. 3 minutes later, an older camera above the dumpster caught a gray Nissan idle beside the gate, then roll away with its lights off. If you chain those angles together, the way investigators later would record, you'd see a simple, damning story told in rectangles of noisy light. In at 14:28 with Leah. Out at 19:03 alone. While the detective requested a warrant copy of the footage, Mia returned home with approval to collect anything that might help. She opened Leah's Notes app on her phone, synced to the laptop, and found a checklist: pay stubs /ID/letter/deposit. There was a second note, shorter, with the rental address, blank, and a line Leah had typed during the cafe wait. He just said lobby first, then conference room if crowded. Another line sat under it like an afterthought: bring copy of W-2 if I have time. It felt like proof of who Leah was: organized, hopeful, careful in the ways a person can be careful without knowing how careful they need to be. The digital team at APD took Mia's screenshots and Leah's phone records and started disentangling the threads. The number Ethan used pinged a VoIP provider that sold disposable accounts for short-term projects. The email address resolved to a server in Arizona used by privacy-forward clients. Those facts, by design, didn't reveal a human name. But the motel footage had something the email did not: a car. When investigators stabilized the dumpster cam clip frame by frame, a reflection on the metal gate caught the Nissan's plate just long enough to be readable. It returned to Ethan Matthew Cole of Round Rock, Texas, a formerly licensed mortgage broker who had switched to independent property services 2 years earlier. The plate hit felt like gravity taking hold. With a name, the search widened: tax records, prior employers, a small claims case where a tenant accused him of keeping a deposit, and 2 rental listings archived by a web crawling service, one for his studio. Utilities included flexible approval posted 3 months ago under the same masked email. Detectives visited Ethan's address at 9:10 p.m. Lights were off. A neighbor reported he left this afternoon with a bag. The gray Nissan wasn't there. A bolo went out county-wide and then statewide. At 1:22 a.m., a trooper in Llano County ran the plate in a gas station lot and saw the alert. The car pulled out before he could approach. Cameras along Highway 71 recorded the Nissan's taillights fading west. Back in Austin, technicians were still working room 217. To the naked eye, the carpet looked clean. Under an alternate light source, it did not. Faint arcs of diluted stain traced from the bathroom threshold to the door frame. Swabs went into envelopes. A long hair lifted by tape from the underside of a chair went into a vial. The manager stared at the patterns like a man seeing a storm from the edge of a field and realizing it is already overhead. He kept saying, no one noticed anything, as if noticing would have changed what happened between 1428 and 1903. Before sunrise, the lab called the case agent, presumptive positive for blood on 2 of the swabs. It would take days to confirm whose. The State Crime Center expedited the request because of the footage, because of Leah's age, because of the car that left with its lights off. In the meantime, detectives reached out to the VoIP provider, to the email host, to anyone who could turn network artifacts into human fingerprints. Most responded with policy language about warrants and privacy. One compliance officer, moved by the circumstances, pointed them to login times that correlated to a coffee shop on Burnett Road and a public library downtown. Those cameras would give the team what they needed next: clear shots of Ethan's face, timestamped before and after his messages to Leah, walking in with a black hoodie and leading with a paper folder like the ones rental agents carry. By noon, the case file no longer read voluntary absence. It read suspicious disappearance. The difference wasn't semantic, it was a gear change. Patrol officers became search teams. A missing person bulletin became a task force board with maps, strings, and timestamps. Mia watched the board build itself like a wall of grief made orderly. Each printed still frame would be a future cut in your video, the way documentaries reassemble moments to make meaning out of what can't be remade. Leah's father arrived from Bastrop with a bag of clothes and a face that looked like it had learned to hold bad news without letting it leak. He answered questions with the square honesty of a man who fixes what's broken for a living. No, Leah didn't have a history of vanishing. Yes, she had been saving for school. Yes, she was careful. No, there was no boyfriend he knew about. He put a hand flat on the table when they played the parking lot clip. He didn't look away. When it ended, he said, "That's her walk. That's my kid." By the end of day 1, the case had a shape. A listing built to feel safe. A man who studied how to sound helpful. A meeting in a public place to lower guard. A short hallway you could cross in 30 steps. A room with a brass plaque and a lock on the inside. And a camera that watched a door close and then, hours later, watched a different door open on a man alone with a bag. The next morning, when the sun slid sideways across the motel's beige stucco and the cafe started brewing coffee that tasted like cardboard in memory, the call came from DPS. Highway camera 71W had recorded the gray Nissan turning down a county road that leads to a quarry. The highway camera on 71W gave investigators something the motel cameras could not: direction. At 1922 on March 11th, the gray Nissan drifted through the frame with its headlights off as dusk pressed the color out of the road. The lens was old, the image soft, but the plate algorithm caught the numbers clean enough to confirm what they already believed: Ethan Matthew Cole was behind the wheel. 2 minutes later, a second camera, County Transportation's newer model mounted on a light pole, recorded the car turning onto Ranger Creek Road, a thin gray ribbon that runs past a shuttered feed store, an empty church, and, 3 miles out, a private limestone quarry posted with "No trespassing" signs and a heavy chain across a service spur. The route fit the kind of decision people make when they choose darkness over help: off the highway, off the shoulders, off the grid. Before dawn on March 12th, a search team moved down Ranger Creek in a leapfrog pattern, vehicles staged every half mile. They weren't allowed inside the quarry without the owner's consent, but they could work the easements, culverts, ditches, and pull-offs where the county had jurisdiction. They found nothing obvious: no clothing, no torn paper, no drag marks cutting the caliche. What they did find was time in the form of cameras. The feed store had a rusting dome pointed at the road. The church had a doorbell camera volunteers installed after a break-in 2 summers ago. A homeowner half a mile farther kept a motion-activated unit over his mailbox because one time a teenager with a lifted truck had crushed it like a soda can. Each unit gave the team another bead on a string. The Nissan passed the feed store at 1928, the church at 1929, the mailbox at 1931. None recorded the car coming back. That asymmetry, entering without a recorded exit, forced the team to draw a box on the map where the Nissan must have left the paved road, turned around, or stopped long enough for a second route home with no cameras to see it. Boxes are where searches begin. Boxes shrink. At 9:43, a rancher who leases pasture near the quarry gate told a deputy he'd seen headlights at the chain the night before, not on the road, off it, like he was nosing up to the sign, and heard the rattle of metal and a thunk. He figured a worker was checking the lock. The quarry owner, reached by phone in San Angelo, said no one had permission to be there after 5 p.m. He offered to meet them at noon with a bolt cutter and his records. He sounded angry in the way people do when help arrives late to a place that does not keep office hours. While the rural team did the slow work of walking lines, the urban team did the fast work of pulling receipts. The VoIP company confirmed the rental account that it called Leah was funded through a reloadable debit card. The card issuer produced a list of top-ups within Travis County: $20 at a Quick Mart on Burnett Road 4 days earlier, $40 at a Goose gas station near Round Rock 2 weeks before that. Quick Mart had cameras. The clerk remembered the customer, black hoodie, beard, bought a scratch-off and a coffee, reloaded the card. He signed the time-stamped receipt in his neat, tired block letters. The signature, E.M. Cole, matched the one on the small claims case from a year ago. People change their phones, their emails, their routes. They don't change how they draw their own names unless they're thinking about it. Criminals rarely consider handwriting. The quarry owner arrived at noon in a dusted-out F-250, swung the truck wide, and snapped the chain free with one pull of the cutter. "We'll put another up when you're done," he told the sergeant, and then he walked the first 100 yards with them to point out where the haul trucks used to queue, where the old office stood, and where rainwater collected in a low trough that had become a shallow pond. "The brush," he said, "was deceiving. Juniper and mesquite can hide a refrigerator in plain sight if you turn your back long enough." The sergeant thanked him and divided the ground into lanes. Cadaver dogs worked the shade, a second team worked the water with poles and a rake net. They found beer cans, a hubcap, and a shoe so gray by sun it gave up when they touched it. None of it belonged to Leah. Back in the city, detectives knocked on doors on Ethan Street. A neighbor with a porch camera had footage from March 11th showing Ethan leaving at 12:57 with a duffel slung over his shoulder. At 21:12, his wife returned from a late shift, parked, and looked down at the duffel sitting upright just inside the garage door. She carried it in. The next clip from 21:19 showed her returning empty-handed to the driveway as if she'd forgotten something in the car. She hadn't. She'd already told officers, with a stunned steadiness, that she hadn't seen Ethan since the morning. She didn't mention the bag because she didn't know it mattered. People don't film their lives with evidence in mind. The case agent obtained a probable cause warrant for Ethan's house, car, and digital devices. In the garage, Tex swabbed the duffel's zipper and lifted a light smear from the inside seam. The living room yielded a phone charging cable that fit Leah's model but not his wife's. In the trash, dated for pickup that morning, sat an empty box for plastic contractor bags and a crumpled receipt from a discount store 2 miles from the motel, timestamp 13:07 March 11th, contractor bags, bleach, scissors, sports tape. A clerk remembered him because he'd asked if the tape was the sticky kind or the stretchy kind. It was both. The store camera showed him slide the items into a cart, pay cash, and leave with the bag nested inside itself, a cheap trick that keeps thin plastic from tearing. If you have watched enough investigations, you learn the rhythm of how facts accrete. It isn't a single epiphany. It's a sequence: receipt, camera, plate, purchase, pattern. Each piece makes the next more probable, more urgent, more explainable to a judge. By early afternoon of day 2, the judge signed the ping order that allowed the team to fetch live location data from Ethan's phone. The carrier returned a last known from the previous night, a sector near the county line that overlapped the quarry box. The phone had been dark since just after 9 p.m. Either it was powered off, or it was somewhere that signal couldn't climb out. A helicopter went up at 15:10 with a forward-looking infrared camera. In daylight, FLIR isn't the miracle TV makes it. Rocks hold heat, ponds read as smooth smears of gray. But the pilot called in one thing that mattered. Near the quarry's low pond, in the lee of a berm, a rectangle of ground cooler than everything around it, as if something had shaded that spot for a few hours then moved. Shade can be a tarp. A tarp can be a lot of things. A tarp can be a place where someone set something down while they made a decision. The ground team hiked to the berm with GPS coordinates scratched on their palms in Sharpie. There, on the leeward side, among crushed limestone and bottle-cap weeds, they found marks that do not occur in nature, parallel lines about 30 inches apart pressed into the dust, the kind casters make when you try to roll weight too heavy for two people but not heavy enough to call for help. At the end of those lines, they found a flattened oval of disturbed soil and, on its edge, a short length of gray adhesive with grit stuck to the sticky side. The tape went into a paper envelope. The soil, and scoops from the disturbed edge and from undisturbed control sites, went into labeled jars. They flagged the scene and backed out. It was not a recovery site. It was a staging site, proof that the quarry was used, and that the box on the map was shrinking in the right direction. At 16:07, Rangers intercepted Ethan's Nissan at a fuel stop near Brady after a clerk called in a driver who paid cash and used a bathroom key without buying anything. The plate reader chirped when the car rolled under the canopy. The stop was textbook, 2 units, one at the pump, one angled, to reduce chances anyone would confuse surprise with threat. Ethan complied. His hoodie sleeves were rolled to his elbows, though the day had cooled. There were reddish discolorations near the wrist he said were barbecue from lunch. They weren't. His knuckles were scraped as if from unloading something rough, heavy, or impatient. In the trunk, officers found a folded tarp, a half-used roll of contractor bags, sports tape, and a cheap luggage scale with a torn hang tag still clinging to the loop. The scale read in kilograms and pounds and had a digital display that glowed a sickly blue. In the rear footwell, tucked under the passenger seat, they found a hotel conference room key sleeve stamped Lone Star INN 217 with a checkout date written in pen, March 11th. People leak truth in the trash they mean to throw away later. Ethan requested a lawyer. The interview paused. The evidence did not. With consent from his wife, investigators cloned an old laptop from the house. The browser history was sparse, private windows erase, but system logs don't forget entirely. Forensic tools rebuilt fragments, searches for month-to-month Austin studio utilities included from 3 months prior, VoIP Austin cheap setup reload card, conference room hourly rental near me, and a video tab open to a creator giving advice on how to make rental listings convert better. He had practiced being convincing. He had studied how to sound like help. The lab called at 1952 with 2 results that bent the case into a narrower channel. The presumptive blood from room 217's bathroom threshold tested human, and DNA from the duffel's zipper mixed with a minor profile consistent with a female relative of Leah's father, likelihood ratio in the millions. It wasn't yet legally tight enough to state as fact, but for investigators the math was moral. Leah had been in that room or in that bag, and either way she had not left the motel the way she came. The district attorney authorized a murder warrant contingent on confirmation, and the search timeline accelerated from cautious to blunt. When they returned to the quarry the next morning with more people and a backhoe, the owner walked the perimeter with the sergeant and told stories about the years when the line of haul trucks stretched to the highway. The place had a way of swallowing noise. It had a way of making a person feel small. At the pond's edge, near the flattened oval, a tech with a need for detail found a broken phone case clip stamped with a brand Leah liked. Mia recognized it from their kitchen counter where Leah used to clip it to her bag so she wouldn't lose it at work. 10 yards beyond that, a dog alerted near a tangle of prickly pear and crumbled limestone. Teams probed methodically. The ground gave with a sigh where the soil had been loosened and tamped and loosened again. The backhoe waited. The shovels did the last work. What they uncovered first was not Leah. It was cloth, a corner of a contractor bag cut by rock, then a loop of sports tape turned gummy by weather and sun. Next to it, under a shallow overburden of dust, sat a small aluminum tag stamped with numbers that matched a luggage scale model sold at the discount store. When the tech lifted the tag, a grain of glitter clung to the adhesive, cosmetic grade, the kind a design student keeps in a box with pens and thread. The sergeant wrote one line on his notepad and drew a square around it: site prepped, staged, abandoned. Down the slope, another team working a different grid found something that took the air from the afternoon, a tire rut that began shallow, deepened at a turn around a mesquite stump, then flattened as if easing to a stop at a low place in the fence where barbed wire sagged. On the other side of that sag, in the county right-of-way, someone had piled brush with the clumsiness of a person out of breath. It was not a recovery then either. But the map, the box on the map, shrank again. You could feel it in the way voices lowered on the radio. You could see it in the way the quarry owner stood a little aside and took off his cap. While the ground tightened, the financial trail widened. Detectives subpoenaed Ethan's bank records and found a cash withdrawal pattern that synced to his VoIP reloads and discount store trips. 2 withdrawals stood out: $400 at an ATM near the motel the week before, and $600 at a machine 3 miles from the quarry the night of March 11th. You do not need $600 to think about doing the right thing. You need $600 to buy time, silence, or distance. The machines had cameras. The images were clear. The man in both wore a black hoodie. He did not look at the lens. At 22:14 on day 3, the crime lab pushed priority on DNA from the bathroom swabs. The result pinged the agent's phone with a tone he had set years ago for calls he never wanted to miss again. 99.9999% probability the profile matched Leah's toothbrush collected from her apartment. The warrant shifted from contingent to active. The words on the face sheet, "suspicious disappearance," were replaced by "murder." Paper does not change the world, not by itself. But it allows people with keys to use them. They brought Ethan from county to the city in the quiet hour before sunrise when a building's HVAC hum is louder than the traffic. His lawyer sat beside him, said little, took notes. The lead detective arranged the photos in a line: the parking lot still, the hallway timestamp, the dumpster gate, the Ranger Creek mailbox, the ATM, the duffel, the tarp, the contractor bag, the phone case clip, the glitter. He did not raise his voice. He did not promise mercy. He did what investigators do when they are not trying to make a moment for television. He narrated the facts and let the man who had moved through them decide whether silence was still useful. Ethan's jaw worked in the way people's jaws do when they are counting a thing that cannot be counted, the number of steps between what happened and what should have. He said he wanted to tell the truth. His lawyer told him not to. He said he couldn't sleep with the images in his head and the smell in his clothes. His lawyer told him to stop. He said the words accident, panic, and "I never meant." The detective did not argue with adjectives. He placed the room 217 key sleeve on the table in front of the man and asked one question the entire case had been building toward for 70 hours. "Where is Leah?" Ethan stared at the sleeve as if it had written something on itself while he was not looking. The lawyer touched his elbow. Ethan looked at the lawyer, then at the map taped to the far wall with the box around the quarry and the marks like constellations where teams had walked. He exhaled through his nose, a sound like giving up and like relief, and said a place name that was not the quarry and not the motel and not the county road with the mailbox camera. He said it soft, as if saying it loud would make it untrue: Hollow Run. Hollow Run was a creek bed that went dry 8 months of the year. It cut through ranch land and under a county bridge where teenagers painted initials and threw bottles. It was 20 minutes north of the quarry as the crow flies and 40 minutes by the roads Ethan's car had used, which is to say, reachable in the window between 1922 and the moment he parked under his own porch camera and left a duffel in the garage like a confession without a noun. Search teams staged at the bridge at first light with poles, rakes, and a drone. The water level was low, the mud slick, the air needles cold for March. Volunteers and waiters moved grid by grid. Dogs worked the banks. A deputy found sports tape half buried under willow roots and called it in with a voice that tried not to break. Upstream, a tech following a faint path through cane found shoe prints wider than a woman's and narrower than a ranch hand's, turning into the creek bed then back out as if indecision had weight. Farther on, in a bend where the current eddies when it rains, a glint showed under a skin of silt. The tech reached down and drew up a metal key ring with a charm shaped like a star. Mia would later say Leah bought it at a craft fair for $3 because it reminded her that light has mass. The story you're watching is about a listing, a meeting, a hallway, a room, a map with a box that shrinks. It is also about time, how 30 seconds of footage can compress an entire life into a direction of travel. Part 3 will cover what Hollow Run gave back, what the autopsy answered, and what a courtroom does and does not repair. At 6:42 a.m. on March 15th, 4 days after Leah Jensen vanished from the Lone Star Inn, the first beam of sunlight slid down the hollow of the Dry Creek bed in Hollow Run. The air was pale and cold enough to sting, and the damp ground smelled of limestone and rust. Search teams had been out since dawn, pacing slow arcs along the embankment where the soil was soft and the brush sparse. At 7:08 a.m., a volunteer paused near a split in the creek bank where water sometimes pooled after rain. There, half covered by soil and reeds, was a fold of dark plastic. A gloved hand brushed away the debris. Beneath the dirt lay the corner of a contractor bag, the same brand recovered from Ethan Cole's car. The team leader marked the coordinates and called it in. For the next 6 hours, Hollow Run filled with law enforcement vehicles, tents, and evidence markers. The tape went up quietly, without shouting or sirens. Investigators who had worked the quarry moved with the deliberate calm of people who already knew what they were about to find. By 1:20 p.m., crime scene techs had opened the bag enough to confirm what the entire county already feared. Inside, wrapped in plastic and a torn section of tarp, were human remains wearing a light gray zip jacket, dark jeans, and one sneaker, exactly what Leah had been wearing in the footage from March 11th. The recovery team took photographs, measured, logged, and lifted. The scene was mapped down to inches. Near the bag, they found a crushed phone, its SIM card snapped in half, a silver key charm shaped like a star, and a piece of sports tape tangled around dried roots. A forensic anthropologist on site confirmed a single, shallow fracture to the jaw consistent with blunt impact, and bruising patterns visible through decomposition that suggested manual pressure around the neck. Every clue whispered the same story: Leah had fought back. The discovery was relayed to the command post at 1:54 p.m. When the call reached Austin, the case agent didn't say the word found. He said, "We're bringing her home." The autopsy at the Travis County Medical Examiner's office lasted 8 hours. It confirmed what the quarry and the motel had already implied. Leah Jensen died of asphyxiation and blunt force trauma between 2:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. on March 11th, the same window her phone went dark. There were defensive wounds on her forearms and broken skin beneath her fingernails. DNA from those nails matched Ethan Cole's. Fibers on her jacket matched the bedspread from room 217. The phone case recovered from Hollow Run matched the IMEI of Leah's missing phone. When detectives laid the evidence before the district attorney, the case no longer needed motive, it had proof in layers: digital, biological, geographic. Ethan Cole's lawyer tried to reopen negotiations, insisting it was an accident during a struggle. The prosecution refused. The phrase accident lost meaning the moment he bought bleach, tape, and contractor bags before the meeting. The trial opened 7 months later in a packed Travis County courtroom. Local media called it the apartment trap case. The state presented a seamless timeline: the rental listing, the texts, the footage, the quarry stop, the Hollow Run recovery. 30 seconds of CCTV from the motel parking lot looped silently as the prosecutor addressed the jury. "This," she said, pointing to the screen, "is the moment between intention and consequence. Everything after this frame is choice." The defense tried to paint Ethan Cole as a man driven by financial stress, not malice, an explanation too small for what had happened. Witnesses dismantled it piece by piece. The store clerk who sold him the tape. The manager who showed the conference room logbook. Mia Holloway, Leah's roommate, who testified through tears that Leah had circled keys on the calendar because she was hopeful, not reckless. Each testimony turned the abstract tragedy into a person with habits, humor, and plans for next month's rent. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Guilty on all counts: kidnapping, murder, obstruction, and tampering with evidence. The judge's voice stayed even as she read the sentence: life without parole. Ethan Cole stood motionless, hands clasped, eyes downward. There was no outburst, no plea for mercy, only a small exhale when the gavel struck. For Leah's father, closure was the wrong word. After the sentencing, he stood outside the courthouse and told reporters, "It's not closure. It's a fence. It keeps the worst part contained, but it's still on our land." Mia Holloway didn't speak publicly again, but she kept Leah's design sketches, posting one each year on the anniversary of her disappearance with the caption, "Still building what you started." The Lone Star enclosed 3 months later. Its sign, sun-bleached and broken, still leans against the fence by the service road. People driving past might not notice it, or the small cross someone placed under the pole near the camera's old angle. But for the detectives who worked the case, that 30-second clip still loops in their heads: the quiet walk across the asphalt, the moment before trust met deceit, and the reminder that evil rarely looks like a stranger in the dark. Most of the time, it looks like help arriving right on schedule. In every city, someone is rewriting an ad, a text, a message designed to sound safe. Leah Jensen's case reminds us that trust is the easiest thing to offer and the hardest thing to get back. If you ever meet someone who insists you skip the office and meet somewhere convenient, remember her story. Because the last 30 seconds of her life began with a listing that sounded too good to be true, and was.